There are few things that have as much impact on us as words. There are times you just hear a phrase and it sends you to a zone of perspective and thoughts that allow you to kind of shape your decision making in a totally different way. These are the types of phrases that tend to shape our perspective in a way that sort of allow us to dig into the creative wells of our imaginations and create almost the personality types that we are trying to groom as we grow as people. These are phrases and words that sharpen our personal philosophies or even change our personal philosophies from one thought process to another. One man whose phrase has stuck with me for a very long time and is the inspiration to this video, the OG, the God, the big homie, the sensei of cool, Denzel Washington. He's a powerhouse of a leading man and with some truly iconic characters. Now, Denzel has got some phrases, King Kong ain't shit on me. Yeah, okay, all right, yeah, I know. Well, you tell me, You tell me what's right and what's wrong. He's got phrases. He's got lines in movies and different things. But to me, not the character or the actor, but Denzel, the man, has said a phrase that has stuck with me for a very long time. And it is, the universal stems from the specific. This phrase actually kind of helped me really sharpen my thought process in terms of creativity and story crafting and narrative and kind of relatability. It kind of lands on a footing of like, we are as much alike as we are different. We do kind of share a lot of differences on the surface as human beings, and when you kind of dig down to the core of human nature, we share a lot of similarities. And sometimes they can be reverse. It could be that we share the things on the surface, but the cores are two totally different things. Ultimately, as human beings, for the most part, we share so much similarity from a core standpoint. The interesting thing was on the surface, looks so different, but when you kind of get down to the middle and the core and the crux of who we are, that becomes the relatable thing. This is why stories have been the way we pass down information and knowledge over centuries and ages, because it's a palatable way to compile and compress information down to something that you can understand, that's relatable and is visual, and you can kind of put yourself in the role of the protagonist to a degree, or the hero, almost like Joseph Campbell's, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, basically saying there's only real one human story, and most of us share that, desire to progress in some way, or to, or we feel emotion in one kind of way, or there's some experience of an emotion in this area. There's there's a human experience, and whichever way you want to take, it's really from the perspective of you. You're the hero of your own story. This is why movies have such an impact on us. In Denzel's movie Deja Vu, he's like an explosives expert that's pulled into this case of a woman who has already been murdered, and this team of scientists that's kind of already been working on the case wants help from him with his skill sets as a private investigator and explosives expert to help them with this time traveling machine that they have, so they can kind of navigate where they need to look. I'm going too far. It's just like, basically, the scientists got a time traveling machine. They could look in the past, and they want to use Denzel's skills to help them facilitate the investigation. I don't know why that was so hard to explain for me. Now, all throughout the movie, to me, Denzel is showing the term "the universal stems from the specific" such in a nuanced way, where he makes the character and the stakes of the story and all the consequences of things happening. He makes it feel very real with sort of subtle things, with how he gestures and how he's interpreting the story as an actor, and as a man, as a black man, and culture, and American, and all of these different nuances. But there are subtle things that you may relate to. And, I think that's what makes him really the best. With that being said, I got 4 ideas that I think can actually bring home the phrase, the universal stems from the specific. Number 1, see the forest for the trees. Everybody kind of knows the feeling of being so engrossed in the details of something you can't really see the big picture. Kind of cut your nose to spite your face. But stories are the main way we are able to get an outside perspective of something without actually having to really experience it. Because a lot of times it's just hard to see all the angles when you're actually in the game or in the thing. Having the ability to get a bird's eye view on something, it just gives you nuance to that situation in a totally different way. When you can, you got fresh eyes on it, a new perspective, new thought process, a new energy to it. It just allows you to be able to come up with solutions and questions even that you didn't see before. In the movie, Denzel's character, Agent Doug Carlin, I think it's Doug Carlin, he's actually able to bring a different viewpoint to the team of scientists because of his skill sets. He's a detective, number one. So he's able to look at things from a totally different standpoint. And then number two, he has all of this firearms. He has all of this fire explosives, or as it, no, what's the word I'm looking for? Fire something fires. There's something with fire in there. I mean, fire is the result, but I'm trying to get like an explosives expert. I guess fire comes from explosives, but there's another fire phrase I was trying to look for. But anyway, he has all of this explosives expertise and ability to kind of see everything in all one picture in a bigger scope, because he's not really nestled down deep into the nitty gritty of that particular investigation. It's almost like seeing this tree, and you're up close on the tree. You can see the lines of the bark. You can see ants crawling up the grooves of the bark. You can see sap dripping down. You can see all these different aspects. You can see gashes from bears scratching the bark and having fights and teeth marks and all kind of stuff. And you can back out and then see 15 to 20 trees. And then you could take a much wider scope and from a helicopter view, this bird's eye view of the whole entire forest. And you see not one tree, but you kind of see this sort of snaking view of multiple trees that kind of look like just one big patch of grass, one big patch of greenery. And you don't really see that one tree anymore. You just see this whole totally different storyline. And that brings me to my next point, which is simplifying the complex. To me, this is usually an unnoticed skill. This is like when I see people who can simplify complex things, I think they have really high observational intelligence, which is like a great thing to have in today's time with all the distractions and shit going on. And if you're able to really look at things, observe it, distill the important parts, extract it, break it down, and then, comprehend it, and then actually relay it back to somebody in a usable way, that's a valuable skill. It's, a person who has the insight and the capability to see things in a way where others can't, maybe because of their skill sets that they've built over time, or they may just have a natural inclination, and talent for something that they've grown from environment or being able to just pay attention to things in a different way. They add a different value to almost any situation because they're the only ones that can do that thing in that way. I think of cats like Bruce Lee with, be water. Being able to take that complex concept of being rigid and soft and being, focused but relaxed. All of those things to kind of poetically break it down into be water is phenomenal. And there's countless other people when I listen to their interviews, Nipsey Hussle or Hove or Nas. I remember one of his partners in his investment group always said they love having him in meetings because while they're crunching the numbers and looking over data and they're doing different tests just to make sure they're investing in the right thing, they love having him there because he reminds them of things that the average person and the average consumer would do, just because he's tapped in more to the average person because he's trying to be relatable as an artist. He's trying to convey his message to the masses. So artists tend to try to think in a relatable way so they could get their point across. And after doing all that, trying to really simplify things and distill it down to its most bare bones vital parts, we doing all of that to get value out of it some kind of way. We see our own stories and other stories. I mentioned earlier in the video like how powerful stories are to us. We communicate through stories, whether directly or indirectly, we communicate with stories to pass on knowledge, to understand problems, to ask questions. It's all filtered through stories much more than we think. You're connecting information in a relatable way. So you might have one piece of information over here that you don't quite understand. So you're trying to link it to this piece of information that you already do understand, and the better you can communicate this string or this through line is what makes it link in your brain the heaviest. But a lot of ways that we kind of understand information is really told in this way, especially when you age it out over decades and centuries. Stories have driven us in a major way as a culture. Look how many books and movie characters people find inspirational, and fan pages and fan clubs and all of these different groups of people who are connected many times through a story, whether it's a fictional story. A lot of times you don't even realize your friend group, as and the people you just hang out with, we may not call it this, but you do have a common story that you all kind of agree with, and it may be more so called a narrative, but it's a perspective that you all agree with, and that's kind of what links you together. And stories and movies drive us in a much more impactful way because of the heightened emotion and suspended belief behind movies. You got sound and the writing and practice rehearsal of acting and all of this just to get to this one piece of art that allows you to really understand this storyline with clarity. You could think about all of the movies and storylines and books and stuff in throughout history, how much different the actual character is than you as a person, but how you still identify with them, even though they may not even be real. It may be a villain, maybe a hero, maybe a side character, but it's their perspective and their mindset and their thought process, and even how they're painted in the context of the story that makes you go like, yeah, that's me right there. That person, that kind of side character, or the main villain, the main protagonist, like the hero of the story, or the villain, like, like, nah, I'm him. I'm her, or she may say I'm her. Like, that's my type of person. Like, I like that kind of vibe. Those are the things that we draw inspiration from. Those are the things that we connect to. And emotions and fears and desires and ambitions, all of those things tied into one sort of storyline or one character or one person is where all the interesting shit is. Like, that's why, if you watch a movie or read a book and the character is very flat, there's no up and down, there's no plot, they don't face any problems in the story. It's just like they just go through, sail through, figure out everything. It's 1, 2, 3. Usually, the story is very boring because life is so much like that. It's up and down. One day you're here, next day you're kind of there. It's like you're still progressing, or you may be backtracking, to some degree, but you're still on this narrative path that you're trying to figure out. Some days you feel like a super winner, some days you kind of feel like a loser, but you're still in the story. I think that's where we connect to things, to storylines so much, is because you get to feel something. And having that feeling is what brings me to my final point. Deja vu. Having that feeling through stories and, fiction and nonfiction, biographies and autobiographies, and, on and on and on. Being able to see it from an outside perspective, you kind of feel like, man, I've felt this before. Like, I felt this feeling before. I know exactly how that person feels. That's what makes you connect to it. I think deja vu, of course it is the feeling of experiencing something before that you personally experienced. But I think, if you can widen the scope of it, you experience little bits of deja vu from storytelling and films and watching things, especially through visualization. I think deja vu seems to be like, the context around it. In my understanding, seems to be it's more incidental, or by happenstance. But I think you can really be deliberate about, a deja vu like mentality, in visualizing things that are going to come to be. And then by the time you actually get there in the physical realm, you've already done it in a mental space. The phrase has been around a long time. Everything is done twice, once in the mind and second in actual physical reality. It's no coincidence that athletes and entrepreneurs and creative people and artists and people who are trying to do something, above average or beyond the normal scope of thinking, try to use visualization in a way where it prepares them for that particular moment. The moment might be, a thing that really needs your attention and energy and time and effort. So by the time you get there, you feel like you've been there 1,000 times because you have in your mind. And I think that's something that you can really use to your benefit if you're deliberate about using deja vu or visualization to your advantage. That's my feeling. The more you visit it and feeling and understanding and the smells and the taste and or the actual experience and the emotion of experiencing that particular milestone that you're trying to hit, and the more you can kind of visit that place and visit that particular thing, the more you'll have success with it. The closer you'll be to it, and the more familiar you'll be with it. And to me, that is the real sense of the word, deja vu. Looking for some truth.